Welcome back to the Hirewell Hot Corner, where sports and recruitment meet. I am your host, Dan Patel, back in the saddle after a quick one-episode hiatus, joined as always by our Iron Man co-host, Louie Marisi. Louie, great to see you again. Let's jump right in. What's going on in your world and the world of sports today?
Well, first, obviously, again, congrats. Glad to have you back. It was not easy taking the reins and kind of playing mediator and host, if you will. So, again, happy to have you back. In my world, recruiting, whirlwind as usual. In sports, baseball's just starting up. We're in the thick of the hockey and basketball playoffs. And, in the back pocket, we got the NFL draft coming up this week.
NFL draft is tomorrow night. Before we get to that, you mentioned baseball. I have to mention it because I don't get to say this often. The Pittsburgh Pirates have the best record in the National League. While that probably won't last, I need to say it. It needs to be on here. I need to hold on to all hope I have.
Hey, I get it. Also, as an NL Central occupant, the Cubs not far behind, but hey, put that feather in the cap. It's been probably a long time since any Pittsburgh Pirates fans can say that. So, off to a hot start. Can they maintain it? We'll see.
They're actually paying their players for once, which is completely unheard of in Pittsburgh. So I'm sure I could do an entire episode on that. But we're here to talk about the NFL draft. Draft night, first round is tomorrow night. We'll have Thursday through Saturday, and we'll get to see 260 or so college athletes hear their names called and get contracts to the NFL. It's always an exciting time of the year. The Steelers pick 17th this year. We also have a sneaky 32 pick overall. Thanks, Chicago. But the Bears traded out of the first spot, and they're drafting ninth tomorrow night. How are you feeling?
As far as the draft, I like where we're at right now. I like what our return was for the first overall pick, getting a number one wide receiver in DJ Moore, adding a couple more picks. I think, we're not in the market for a quarterback. We have ours. I don't care what anyone says. Justin Fields is our guy. And now it's about surrounding him with weapons from the wide receiver position. We added Tanyam in the tight end position, so him and Komet. Now I think with that ninth, either we're going to trade it back a few more spots, maybe, or we're going to lock in someone on the O-line or the D-line. Those are our two biggest holes, I think, right now, after what we've already done. So I'm excited. I believe fully in Poles as our GM. He's done nothing but it feels like he listens to us as fans and what we see on a weekly basis because we live and die by this. And it seems like it makes sense what he's doing. And as a Bears fan, a lot of things haven't in our last 15, 20 years.
Yeah, I feel that. You say, he listens to the fans. I think the fan pick for Pittsburgh last year was Kenny Pickett. He matured nicely over the first season. There's high hopes for him in Pittsburgh to continue that upward trajectory. And I think the Steelers kind of outperformed what everyone thought was going to happen to them last year. So it's interesting to see hopefully identify and address some key needs, maybe a corner, maybe a O-line, D-line, like you said, and hopefully get us back to playoff contention. We're not too far removed, not nearly as much as a Chicago, unfortunately for you, but there's a lot of optimism around both teams, so it's exciting. Not only are the 260 or so college athletes going to hear their names, but after Saturday, there's that frenzy in the hour after with all the undrafted free agent contracts that have gone out too. But looking at the grand scheme of things, how many players at college are trying to go to the NFL this year? Thousands? We got to look at the dark side of the draft and all the guys who their dreams are go to the NFL, hear their name called, and they might not get that opportunity.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate time, but it is the risk you run. Are you declaring when you don't have to? Do you not know what your stock is in the market, if you will, like if you really want to go that far? Or do you have to declare because you're a senior or fifth-year senior or whatever? So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of free agents out there, undrafted. Some of them are going to make their way to practice teams, and I'm sure 2, 3, 4 years down the line, we're going to see some that emerge as starters, those good luck stories that you hear. But let's face it, the majority are going to probably have those hard luck ones where they're scrapping and clawing to make a practice squad. We'll see them all on Hard Knocks on HBO. We'll see those stories. It's a tough market. It's tough business to break into.
For sure. Even with the addition of, the XFL, the USFL, there's more opportunity these days, but still very small percentage. And when you look at just the sheer number of athletes you have in college at the sport. So, but, there's a lot of, big glam and it's all the fun and games of actually getting to the draft. But let's take a look at what it takes to get there. I mean, this draft it's a 3 day process, but there's so much more that goes into it than these 3 days and what a lot of people think about. And I know we have a great way of tying that to recruiting. So
1,000%. So, from a general manager, coach, and all that standpoint, the draft started already. It was 3, 4, 5 even a year ago, looking at game tape, watching guys going 2 games to watch them in college. How do they perform under pressure? So there's so much scouting and pre-work before the draft that goes into it. So they have an idea of, okay, well, when we're on the clock, they have their 3 picks that they're hoping are still there, and they have to decide between team needs, long-term, short-term, contract stuff. Like, there's so much that goes into it. So on the flip side, for recruiting and our jobs, what does that look like when, we're sourcing? When a client hires us to begin a search for a specific candidate, what goes into that? What have we done beforehand? How do we start that? And it's challenging. I mean, you go on LinkedIn Recruiter, you hit open to work, and if, let's just say, in the United States, you're going to get 5 to 10 million people who are open to work. That's the sample size we have to start with. And then from there, how do we locate even just the one person that could eventually be the hire, let alone all the people we source, screen, submit, get interviewed, ultimately to get to that hire that might not actually ever come. So,
oh, but Louie, you're a recruiter. Isn't your job just to post job positions and then people apply and then you hire somebody, right?
yeah, I mean, that's why everyone says recruiting is the easiest job, right? It's because, we post a job and people apply and our work's done. Wrong. If you think recruiting is easy, I let you walk through my shoes this week. It has been, normally we say roller coaster, but this has been a downward spiral down a mountain through a cactus field. That's how I would describe my week.
Now, we don't really go into a ton of detail about what, our day-to-days and how that looks, but especially for the sake of this one, diving into, the scouting reports and the game film and whatnot, why don't you give us a glimpse into your week? What does that look like from your role?
Okay. Well, right now, so I just had a call today with a client that is asking me to start a brand new search. What we'll start with, network. What does our network look like? Is it a specific location that they're asking for? In this case, yeah, it's East Coast, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, that area. So they got to be there. Do I know people? Do I have connections there? So that's what a kickstart to a search would look like. And then right to LinkedIn. I start with open to work, cutting down the playing field a little bit from a big margin, role title, years of experience, industry. These are all sorts of parameters that you can set to hopefully find yourself. My goal is a pool of 300 to 400 candidates that I can then scroll through each of them and send a message to, the top 20, 30 from that group, and then, expand it out from there, see what shakes out. But, plenty of roles that we work on that there's 50 submissions and still no placement. Hiring managers, they hold a lot of power. Do some of them abuse that? 1,000%.
Sure. And I know in previous episodes we've talked a lot about the hiring process, the interview process, the keys to communication, transparency, whatnot. Those are all ideal scenarios in our heads of the perfect outlay of what we're looking at. Most of the time, you don't get that. And so you're just talking about all the troubles that we run into on a pretty common occurrence. And you're hitting on sourcing the first time for a role, let alone what happens when they get through the first batch of interview candidates and none of them work out. Then you're sourcing a second batch of candidates, and the age old, this person interviewed great, but I want to see a couple more. That's my favorite response. I love it so much.
That's a tough one for sure. It's, you have found someone that you like, and then they're like, oh, keep them warm. It's like, listen, this market is hot. Like, they don't want to be kept warm. They will make a decision if they have an offer between one that is real and one that might come. They're going to cover their own ass, and they're going to take the one that is on paper and writing in front of them compared to the one that could never come. So, that excuse is definitely one we hear all too frequently. And then, then there just seems to be the clients that don't seem like anything would please them. Working with one that literally, if you are currently not in a job, just maybe got laid off yesterday, they won't interview you. If you don't have the scenarios and the type of power that these people exert is just bewildering to me at times. But
It's crazy because at the end of the day, people assume, well, if you don't get that one person, you're going to hire somebody, right? Not always. You might have one really strong candidate, and like you said, the market's hot. They might go find something else. There are times where they're interviewing elsewhere. They are, whether or not they say that, and offers come through on a daily basis. Just like we get new candidates, new jobs, something might change internally on the company side, and all of a sudden, well, we don't need to hire for this role. Maybe now, maybe the next couple months, maybe ever. So it's a world of curveballs, I
yeah,
would say.
you just have to be prepared for them. And always, I would say keep your expectations low. I mean, it's a low percentage business where, the amount of people that you screen to the amount that you place is not a high percentage. But I guess it kind of speaks back to the draft. You can do as much research as you want. You can go through every assessment or anything, and you can make an educated pick or a draft. That person can be a great pick. That person could not pan out even in the slightest. But it's really about taking that chance. And that's one thing I encourage hiring managers to do. If this person checks 9 out of 10 boxes, and the 10th is they have 3 years experience instead of 4, I would urge them to hire that person. Take that chance compared to, waiting around for the unicorn, the one that might not ever exist. You need someone in this seat. Every decision you make in business, in hiring, you're taking a chance on someone. Yes, you can be educated and make an educated one, but looking around for the exact perfect fit, you're making it much harder than it needs to be.
Absolutely. And I will say that not every process is as difficult, and not every hiring team is as difficult to work with. It's easier to complain about the rough ones, but we have a good number of we'll say great GMs, great war rooms, companies that we love working with who are really passionate about the recruiting side. They understand what goes into it. And for every bad experience, we probably have a great one as well. So always want to put that disclaimer out there.
Agree 1,000%. Like working with one candidate or one client who did reject some people, gave great feedback as to why, not just like the most generic stuff that doesn't help me refine my search. They have someone going on site next week for the final. That person is the person I just had another intake call with for another one of their businesses. Like there are great clients, and we're not saying clients who don't push back or reject candidates are bad clients. That's not what we're saying. We're saying the ones that can provide honest feedback that shows that they've done their due diligence and, show us that our time is worth it. I can work with that 100 times out of 100, but setting parameters that are just out of left field that, it's either a yes or a no. If we send someone who has this, they won't even look at them. That's where I have a bit of a gripe. But hey, you're going to get the great ones. You're going to get the bad ones, like anything. So, got to keep the head up, keep running through the tackles, I guess you want to call it, since we're on the topic. But yeah.
There you go. Well, we'll segue that straight into the 2-minute drill because I know we're running out of time, and that was a great way to end it, Louie. I'll just say recruiting's not everything that people might seem from the outside. If you want to learn more, you want to think you can handle it, and you want to talk about it, we're happy to share these experiences with you in further detail.
Yeah.
Louie, bold prediction for tomorrow night. Round 1 of the draft. What do you got?
Bears are picking at 9. If Jalen Carter gets to that point, I think we take him. But that's from a personal standpoint. My bold prediction is I think he might fall out of the top 10. Jalen Carter being the stud, I guess you call him interior defensive lineman for Georgia, who looks like a man among boys out there. Had a rough combine. I think he had some off the field stuff. It's dropping his stock, but hey, that could all be very much planned in a way. So if the Bears get him at 9, that's great. If he falls out of the top 10, that would be my wild pick.
There you go. I think my bold prediction is that CJ Stroud is going to be the 4th quarterback taken in the first round tomorrow night. And I think that's pretty bold because a lot of people think he might go number 1. I think what tips it off for me is there's that IQ test, the Wonderlic that goes on for the NFL draft picks. And I know for a lot of positions it doesn't really matter, but for quarterback, I think it's a bigger impact. And he scored extremely low on
I think
that.
he signed his name, and that's what got him his score.
His 18%. Yeah. So do I think he's a great quarterback? I don't know. Ohio State quarterbacks just don't pan out. Sorry, Louie.
Fighting words, Dan. Fighting words.
So we'll see what happens. I still think he's obviously a lock for top half of the first round, but that's my bold pick. And then a special bonus pick. My boss, our resident Lions fan, Jeff, Said bold pick the Lions are taking AR-15 Anthony Richardson at 6.
Interesting.
He
Okay.
wants Jalen Carter too.
Okay. Well, hey, I mean, Lions division rival with us had a great year last year, and I will say this after watching Hard Knocks, I love their coach. Like I would run through hellfire for that guy. So and the team shows it, and they're making moves. They've took a step in the right direction. So Lions, our division with Rodgers finally getting moved to the Jets is wide open. I don't think Kirk Cousins is good at all. And I think the Vikings would probably be the easy pick to win our division, but I still think it's wide open.
I like the Lions for the division this year, and I've very quickly become a secondary Lions fan in the NFC, so I'm hopeful for them. Well, on behalf of Louie and myself, thank you once again for tuning into the Hirewell Hot Corner. Do join us again in 2 weeks for our next episode, and as always, stay classy, LinkedIn.